a process of animation which is data-driven. I mean, in the sense that it's too complex to do it with timeline transitions, but you can do it with data. So I'm just going to escape out of that. Okay, so it's Museum of Sydney, which I'll just try and find their Facebook link. Right, so Museum of Sydney had created this project called A Word a Day, no, 1,000 Words. And within that project, they, I'm trying to find the post. Oh, here's an example. So it's called One Word Wednesday. And so on these posts, people would make comments, and so all these comments, sorry, just opening up. All these comments have been brought in to the animation. So what you saw in the video was one of those pictures, and all the comments become the text in the animation. So that's come in as a spreadsheet document, and the spreadsheet has populated the code, and I'll just, most of these programs use what is a timeline animation approach, meaning you put elements on the timeline and you generate content based upon timing and animation and treatments and transitions, etc., etc. So most of the work that I'm doing with Robin doesn't use a timeline so much, it uses expressions. So we rely upon expressions. I don't think there's an example here. But so it's driven by code. Part of the reason for that, and I'll just stop sharing for the moment. Part of the reasons for that is that often these animations, windscreen, and we just switch that over. Just, oh, sorry, thought train. So this work had text scrolling through there. I presume you might have seen it by now. But this text had to be controlled to a very high degree, and the expansion and the transitions also had to be controlled very finely and minutely. So it's easier to control the animations using code than timelines. The timeline's quite clumsy, and also when we're rehearsing and refining the object, we ended up using timeline techniques quite a lot. So it's a way I enjoy working, and also I've worked similar with this museum, code-based animations rather than, so it's kind of a generative, it's halfway between a generative artwork and a video artwork. There's a hybrid between generative content and video content. Halo, okay. So Halo is a really nice example of, does the audio come through on this? What was nice about this work was that, and often this is how I work with sound, there'll be a project. So I'm just putting aside the digital processes where it's driven by code, and these works are driven by music. So in these cases, often there's commissioned sound. This one was commissioned by Michelle Zen, commissioned specifically for the footage. I showed her the footage and she wrote the music. And they're generally promotional pieces which promote the artworks. There's often motion-controlled camera work with motion heads, time lapses, controlling time, controlling movement with machine-driven tripods and things. So she had 2 expressions in this work, and the second expression in this audio was this more kind of dance. She's a dance composer, she writes beat music. So it was quite nice to have these beats, and as a video composer, I was able to, the composition was open enough and loose enough. So I've done many videos for this group and for other groups, and I think for me the pleasure in this work is that there's a brief initially. It's, you know, show the sculpture or whatever, or document. You know, the brief is fairly simple, but but there's a fairly open brief in terms of music, and so I bring in whatever music. And often the composition of the video will start with music, and I'll find a piece of music first, and then cut and compose to the music. Now, some people think that's a very lazy form of editing because it's very easy to cut to music. Some of my industry friends say that, but it's enjoyable, and in a sense, the music directs and contours movements and things in the video. So they're essentially
Ian,
the two.
can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
William's just made a comment in here about he likes the transition between the music and interview in the video.
All right. Is it this one?
Maybe it's a long one about the hello form.
Yeah, I think it's not sure. Well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we're referring to this video, which is the it's called Making Halo Long. And I mean, obviously there's lots of lovely things about this video, which was really enjoyable to make, but interviewing all these are interviews with all the engineers. There were 8 engineers involved in this artwork. So, I mean, the transitions between interview and I'm not sure which section you're referring to, but they would have had to be, massaged quite nicely. But that's pretty typical of this kind of project, because there are so many, what do you call this, partners, Robin? Is it partners? There's so many.
One of the questions that Elena had. What was your question, Elena?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I asked. I was asking for those projects, which parties or partnerships are involved, and like who started, and then how would those people work together, and also about the budget and the profit. It's quite a lot.
No, that's great questions. And this question, Elena. So typically with this project, there I'll just go to the credits, because it's probably, you find most of that information in the credits. So typically there'll be my primary contact, which is the. Are we still sharing screen? No, I'm not. I don't know why this is not playing.
Can I just jump in here and I'll make a little comment? So for example, the project that I work with Ian on, some of the projects are initiated by myself and some are commissions. So for example, Windscreen, which is the Thought Train project, was I proposed to the group Windscreen, who are a part of the New South Wales Transport, I proposed my project. They invited artists from all over Australia and the world to propose a project. And 20 artists were chosen that our work is on maybe 2 or 3 times a year for a whole month. And that gets played only for that period. So the selection was, we had to put a proposal together, then we had to put a design proposal together, and then the final one. So you go through a series of project proposals. Each one of them you get paid $3,000, $4,000, $10,000, whatever it is in each project. So the commissioning process is the artist applies, and then the artist brings the team that they want to work with along. And so I invited Ian to work with me on it, because he and I work on these big projects together often. And he's the After Effects master. I mean, Ian's got an amazing knowledge around After Effects. My knowledge around After Effects is very minimal in comparison. So the work that actually Windscreen comes from, the Thought Train comes from, is based on a whole series of work that I've been working on for about 20 years, which deals with the idea of communication and language. And the language that I was playing off was sort of like a whisper or a thought, or an idea of someone having an earworm or something that repeats in your head when you're walking along in your subconscious. So most of the words throughout that project are words that are songs that happen in your head, the names of trains that pass by you, and the words that might be just an incidental thought, a subconscious idea. So that was my idea, and also working off I've been working around whispering architecture. So that crossing over of the text and the moving of the text is a play of the idea of what it's like when you have a word or a spoken sound bounce inside of a whispering architecture. What happens to the vibration of the sound when you speak inside of those spaces and when we speak is that we have sound waves that bounce around the space. So it was a play off the sound wave, not literally, but metaphorically. Does that make sense? So the commissioning process and the costs and the money that you receive for it is different each time, of course. So there is a fee for the artist, there's a fee for the technical development, there's a fee for the person who is the technical person who is working on the building the structure inside the train station. And then there's a fee for a project managers. There's a whole load of structures of fees. It's a bit like making a film. Everybody has a position inside the structure, inside of these public artworks. So a lot of the works that I make are working in the public domain, and I work like a director.
Yeah, I just want to pick up a point on that, because the projects that we've worked on is Thought Train, but there's also a lot of your earlier works and the most recent work, Voices Within. And just want to sort of explain that this is a very low resolution screen on the archive, on the outside of a building. But we did the exact same video process. After Effects was used to generate the video. But this screen is only 7 pixels high by about 140 pixels. So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little screen. Something like a Tamagotchi or a little tiny, like, toy, children's toy. Even though it's a tiny physical video, the output was still using generative processes and techniques that we learnt in this Thought Train work. It's very similar animation templates were used in this, and even the earlier works, which was developed a long time ago, very similar animations techniques were developed in here as well. This was using Flash, and later on we don't use Flash anymore. We use After Effects for most of these now. So it looks like text, but I mean, of course, it's much nicer in video. But I'm going back to that question, which hasn't been really answered by me, which was, what were the costs, or what are the invested partners of this work? And I was just going to say at the end, there were 5 versions of this video made. So initially, the contract and the brief comes from my clients, who are the artists, these 2 people here. These artists have been commissioned by Partridge Event, were the producers. So like film, you have a producer. So this is the production company who produced the artwork, the object. They have an invested interest in the video. They have a client, and the client is, right at the end, we have the major client who was commissioned, the sculpture was commissioned by Fraser's Setsuya House and City of Sydney. So 2 property developers and the local council are all in together in this project. So this was $1 million sculpture. The video, I think, was about $10,000, between $10,000 and $20,000. It's only short, it's 7 minutes, but there's lots of interviews. There's throughout the video, there was lots of time following each step of the process. That's install. I think in the long form, you see the making. So there's going to the factories. I think there was like 10 locations, 7 or 8 interviews, and and then there's 4 or 5 different cuts. So there's a 1-minute cut for a teaser. There's a 3-minute cut for YouTube and their short channels. The long form, which is the making, which is like 7 minutes. And then there's the work was also became part of an engineering award in Australia. So what happens often when you get these videos is that every client has a different focus. So Partridge wanted the engineering focus. These, Turpin and Crawford, they have the interview, they want the art and the development focus. So you end up often cutting 3 or 4 different versions to suit different markets, different locations, different mediums. You know, you have TikToks come out, like, you know, short 10-second videos. And increasingly, the short 1-minute video is gaining popularity because people don't have time to watch a whole long video. And it's all about messaging in many cases. It's just about, you know, putting a flag up and directing attention to your projects. So the longer forms are getting less. So we got that for the parties. How is your work being impacted by the special situation? Well, okay, currently I'm not doing any photography, but fortunately I have the 2 websites and a video for the museum, and that's all going online. So anything that's going online has not been stopped. In fact, with an interview with the museum yesterday, and that was the Museum of Sydney, they this website and the video was all going into an exhibition, and that exhibition's not planning to open. So now the website is becoming the major expression of this work. That's the 1,000 words, the text work. The impact is I've just had to go home and work from home. And there's no photography work at the moment, which is fine because I'm too busy.
Question. Can you show, Ian, can you show No Man's Landing? The No Man's Landing video. This was a video of, by coincidence, Jenny, who made the halo work, myself, and 3 other artists, 1 other Australian artist, 1 German artist or Dutch artist working in Germany, and 1 Glasgow artist. We're invited to propose for a project. This really crazy idea of making an artwork on water that would be in Australia, in Germany, and in Glasgow. And we came up with a really big, very expensive project in the end. But Ian did and we had to have a little bit of a promo to try and keep moving on the project. And the project was called No Man's Landing. I think I showed you a reference in the notes. And Ian, can you bring up No Man's Landing?
Sure. Just before I do that, I just want to, I'm sharing screen. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly show this, because this is another example where I was commissioned to do a text work. And in a sense, this is work which sits between museum work, entertainment, signage, and supporting exhibitions. So the museum work, the new museum work that I'm doing now, is very similar in terms of its cultural purpose as to this text. This work was commissioned for an exhibition at the Opera House, and it celebrates a historical event in Australian history in the 1960s when there was a protest at Parliament House at Canberra. These are the names of, I think, 180 Aboriginal people who attended this protest, and they are all honoured here in this exhibition as an important early political protest people. So this was generated with Flash, and it's got a more of a filmic approach. But to show that video, I have to, just wondering where that video is. Is it in...
Gia and Maggie, can you put up your questions?
Yeah, sure.
I think Ian has answered my question at the first.
Pop it up anyway. Still put it in. Let's have a look. Number 1, video of the work.
Okay, that's on yours, right?
So this was like a 20 or 30-minute performance that needed to be, hang on, can you wait for a second, Ian? Can you just pause it for a sec? That needed to be condensed into 1 or 2 minutes. That was trying to give the idea of the work in a very, very quick snap. And so the work is made up of people entering the work, the audience from either side. So it's a box on the river, open, and then the box closes. And then inside the box, once you're sitting, is a performance of a person singing. And you're inside a whispering architecture and the walls speak to you. So it's multi-layered audio. So you've got live performance, and also inside the walls of the dome are speakers where you have voices speaking to you. And so this work had to give the feeling of what the work was about. Was a really complex thing. So Ian worked on it and I worked with him on this video, and it's trying to give the visuals of the work, the architectural of the work, and the sound of the work, and the feeling of what it was like to be in this space.
Ich weiß, ich war dort. Ich sah die große Leere in der Seele. Und du hast meine gesehen.
Halt deine Augen offen.
Come back safe, my love.
I'm here with you. Stay with me. Don't leave. Stay.
This work I'm extremely happy with. Mostly, again, it's a really happy mixing of audio and video. So I'll just run this one. That's the client. So often with these projects, you're really having to display the work because it's all about the work. You're in the servant of the work.
Yeah, sure. So my question is about the article about After Effects or the Velvet Revolution. So it said After Effects gives a lot new visual aesthetics that did not exist before. So could you please tell us more about that?
Okay. Has anyone seen the video Be Kind Rewind? I'm just going to add this here. Anyway, it's a very nice video because it's kind of honoring the history of effects in video and in filmmaking. It's full of effects, and it's by a French director whose name's just gone off my head for the moment. But I'd say really what characterizes After Effects is that the ability to, which I'm doing in my text works, manipulate content using code and algorithmic systems. So often for me, building a video, well, I'll spend a whole lot of time working on code and studying code and writing essentially JavaScript. I'm just going to write that down here. It's a version of JavaScript which is used by After Effects, and then there's a whole world of plugins and generative effects like 3D animation effects, etc. Now I know that you live in a mediated world full of effects, etc. So that is essentially these essays. Kind of a lot was written about the transition into a filmmaking which has more animation or more generative content brought into the filmmaking process. So I've worked with filmmakers who worked in pre-digital eras, and it's actually, some of them, it's quite tricky because they have this idea of how, in the past you had to do it step by step by step. For example, just one element is that you had to write the story, then you had to get the cameraman, then you had to act, and then you had to film it, and then you process the film, and then you edit the film, and then you do the coloring of the film, and then you do the distribution, the release. Well, with digital processing techniques, you can often run all those processes simultaneously. So now, these days, making film, you can have, the effects and the making of the film arrive at the same time in the performance of the action. So you might have seen, Pirates of Penzance or something, and people wearing suits with black suits with balls on them, position markers. So you get, the movement of the body. So these trackers, the balls, are used in After Effects to track movement. So we can use those points to track movement. And so there's a lot of complex, fine relationships between generative and analog techniques. Analog meaning coming out of the camera, and generative meaning coming out of computers, and it's driven by code. And that's fundamentally what After Effects, which is why I think a lot of photographers and people enjoy After Effects, because it offers a kind of midway point between video editing and generative editing. So you can blend them and interweave elements driven by code. And that's similar to my use of music. Interweaving music to music drives content, and so code drives content. I can't find them. And often these are defining the look and experience. And so there's a very commercial look to these plugins, but they're all generative. They add false lights, fake lights, they add false movement, fake particle effects. We used particle effects in some of Robin's work. This work has handmade generative content as well, but you can buy plugins which will do a lot of that material. So these all contribute to the oh, sorry, I thought I was sharing screen. I wasn't. These all contribute to the look and the feel. And so I'd say at the moment, we've just gone through a period where I think people were really sick of these synthetic looks. And so they're using hand looks or hand animation techniques. So about 10 years ago, there was a resurgence of hand animation techniques. Be Kind Rewind was made about 10 years ago, when there was a real celebration of film tricks, but old school analog in the space of digital. So a lot of filmmakers, we have all these techniques and tricks about making films, but we also are aware of the cliches. And so I think I shared that. Yeah, so that the cliche, these plugins often used without you know, some thought, become sort of just like cliches. So it's important to use them in a judicious way. So I'm just going to move on to, because I'm aware that time is getting short, I'm just going to move on to Jia Wang's question.
But in the thought train, I could see the words coming out, the different shapes, sometimes with themes, sometimes with the curving, the interscrolling from the top to the bottom.
Oh yeah.
Also overlapped ones. Could you please tell me why do you mean by that? What's the meaning of that?
The overlapped ones. Robin, that's a question for you.
I think I was talking about that before a little bit. Well, I'll just say a little bit about it. I was talking that idea of the moving of the form and the collapsing of the form has two main reasons. One is to play with the idea of the encoding of the words. So no longer are the words readable, but are pushed and squashed in a way that they're encoded, like Morse code was encoded. So it's a language that can be broken down if you look at it in the right direction. So if you lie down underneath the words, you'll read it as an anamorphic text. You'll be able to read the text because you've got a different angle, the particular angle that allows you to read it. The other thing is that it's about that play of the words moving and changing direction. It was a play on the idea of what it is when words bounce off walls or in structures, and particularly in whispering architecture, in dome structures, where words actually bounce off particular parts of a parabolic form to create, making the sound wave visible. That was what I was playing with inside of that. And the idea that there are sounds jumping and bouncing around us all the time.
Yeah, maybe I think I want to add something to that. This, I don't know if you should be able to see it from the pictures, but this screen was it's a 5K screen, so it's 5,600 pixels by 780 pixels high, and it wraps around in that section of when you walk down, the screen wraps around. So it was very clear that we were needing to compose a work that worked in the architecture. So it's responsive to the space of the screen. It was a lovely opportunity to make a video work custom for physical architecture. And I want to say generally a lot of the thinking, which is really lovely between a lot of the architectural video works, is that we have the opportunity to write very specific video experiences or screen experiences that are driven by this form that the video sits in. So the video is both working with and off, and content is often driven by the form that is in the video. And this in a sense this always informs your professional practice, because should you get a commission, should tomorrow, one of you get a commission to make a video, any kind of video, one of the questions you'll ask the client is, what's it for? Where's it going? Is it YouTube? Is it a cinema? What is the market? So then you know characteristics of the screen, of the capacity of the sound, all kinds of things which start to affect what you can do. So right now, for example, the museum work that I'm doing today is going onto a 4K screen. So I have to make a 4K video. Just, simple. It's not complex, but that's at a more mundane level. But in the architectural works, we get to do that in a very rich, much richer and complex way, because it's embedded into the architecture. I mean, looking at the Wuhan celebrations, I see that there are videos all across buildings and projections and stuff. And so there's a whole language of projecting into physical spaces, which is for an artist, it's a really lovely place to work in, because you get these really unique situations to present your work and unique canvases to showcase works. I guess you know what I'm talking about with the video projection, video and light works in the city of Wuhan next to the river.
So a lot of these, so that kind of idea of making a work for a particular environment is a very well versed system or process for a lot of artists, and it's called site-specific installation most of the time. So it's site-specific, so it's specific to its particular site that it's being made for. And that's where my practice sits. I make site-specific artworks most of the time. So the room or the environment is always directing the work. So architecture is a large part of my work. And yeah. Are there any more questions? Whatever.
Yeah.
I think Ian has answered that question.
Okay.
The questions now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any more questions that come about?
William Wu has a question for you, Robin.
I think I've answered it, but do you want to ask me, William?
I just noticed when the two sections come into in the middle,
Yeah,
the music will change from the normal to some music from the wall. So
Well, it was, the work was about the war between three or many different countries, but the main countries were Germany, Australia, and United Kingdom. And that First World War was, you know, they were kind of quite major participants in that war. And so some of the information that we were looking at and the sound that we were looking at and trying to evoke was about what it was to go into war or to go to somewhere foreign, and then what it was like to be somewhere where you don't really know where you are, and that you no longer have a voice. You no longer have agency.
I just want to share one more thing, because we talked about the UNO project, which I don't think you've posted the videos yet.
No, I haven't.
So we haven't. This is, again, this was I mentioned it.
oh yeah,
You've seen
this
it.
is very cool. Yeah,
Do you know where it is?
maybe it's in the city.
In Green Square.
Green Square.
Yeah.
Yeah. Green Square.
Yeah. So this was more of a commercial project. Doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of art in this, but it was a nice piece to animate, and we, again, using the similar sort of text animation.
There's also film animation in this, but we don't have any film of it yet. 5-hour work. So there are 5 hours of footage in this, which is a very, very long process. It took us a lot of time to do this. And all of the work is about being at home. And that is so weird, that the work in itself is all about what it is to be at home, poetically. And there's also in reference to fortune, good fortune. I don't know if any of you know the I Ching, the Book of Change. It's Chinese.
Yes.
So there, I've taken the words and the hexagrams from the Book of Change, which is about playing with your own fortune inside your own home. And there are also a series of films that play with that as well, but there's no visual. And if you see it in the daytime like this, it's actually it's better in a way with the naked eye to see the work in the night. At the moment, the park isn't finished. The park is being built right now. And so when the park is finished, we'll have an opening of the work. I'll invite you guys to come along, and it will be in, hopefully in, well, who knows now, maybe early next year when the park is finished. And then the work will be very visible. Because it's so low resolution, you have to be able to see it from a distance. It's better to see from a distance.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to just add another comment to the questions of partners and where is it? Budget, profit. So, I mean, in the case of in the case of these videos that I'm doing, they're just direct commission. So there's no it's not like a distribution. But increasingly, I'm as a sole trader, a video maker, my model is moving to a what's the word?
Got feedback.
I know. It's moving to a licensing model. So rather than sell time for money, I'm moving into what I think is selling access to the asset. So in the case of this project, we will license the architect. This is sorry. In the case of this project, I will license the producer, the architect, the technical designer, and Robin Backen, but we're partners, so it's free. Access to the stills and video for their promotion. So it's a different model of doing business. And I think for young filmmakers, it's a better model because the price is connected to the value of the work, not your hourly wage rates. You might get $50, $40, $80, $100 an hour as a video editor or a video maker. And when those hours are used, that's it. Whereas if you have the licensing model, you charge a fee which would represent the value of the film to the client. So the architect will see this as a really, this architect, for example, has millions and millions of dollars of budget. So to invest in $5,000 for a really hot video that showcases their work is a tiny budget. But for you as a filmmaker, and if you can sell it to vested parties inside the project, then you have a better opportunity to make more money and make better work, get better cameras, etc. So it's a better model for selling work. That's the best commercial news right now. That was from Alina. Just coming back to you, Alina, on that very first question.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if, many of you will, well, you might become independent film producers for other people. But at the moment, I think most of you are making films from your own, of your own. That's right, isn't it? That's what you're learning, to make your own films, which is a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for answering the question. It's just like because I haven't got into the industry and it's hard to know like how film production works and how the this artistic project work in terms of like collaboration and finance. So
I mean, I think it's different in all of the, in the film industry. It's quite a different process to what Ian does in many ways because it's in the art world. I mean, the artists. It's a when you're making a big. Well, I don't know. What do you reckon, Ian?
No, I don't think it's that different, really. I think the complexity often. I mean, I would all hope that you get budgets as soon as you can. More than likely, you will probably. I mean, what you could hope is that you get invited to be a junior editor on a project or junior. You play a role within some production, or you might have friends who are making music and you get asked to make a video clip for a band or for a musician, and you can edit the video on your laptop and you can shoot it with your camera. but then yes, you have to decide on a budget. And I think at this point, your budgets will entirely depend upon, you have to look at what do you want to say, how do you want to make the film, and then you just have a literal a rule of thumb which was set a long time ago, and it's a good thing, is like figure out the budget and then double it and then offer that to the client. That is a good rule of thumb. So if anyone comes anywhere near approaching you to make a video for something, you just literally have to figure out all the costs of producing, like us on a spreadsheet, and then the hours in production. And it's very hard to calculate this. I'm after 25 years, I can quote very well on photography and video, but I'm still not a very good quoter on web projects, because web projects take a really long time. So I'm a bad quoter on web projects. I often undercharge, but on video projects, I can be very tight and very accurate, and have profit that's very, profit meaning, excess money from the budget. That's guaranteed, and you need to have excess money because you have to live. You have to pay all kinds of other expenses. So yeah, it's complex. Sorry, I realize I'm shaking up and down. It's not an easy thing to do. Also, I mean, at this stage, I mean, I don't know where your careers will take you and what you want to look at, but I see that the video industry is being a really, I mean, I think it's a great time right now for anyone making video, because all the businesses are stopped and everybody needs to communicate to their clients and their customers. So people are drawing upon Zoom, but they're also making explainer videos, because we don't have face-to-face anymore. So we have explainer videos, for example. So businesses are needing to have video content on their website to help drive the business. And in my case, I'm working with cultural projects, artists, architects, and museums, but more commercially based, more business-to-business based videos there'll be lots of opportunities right now. There'll be lots of video being made, and I think it's good. I mean, I think my work is protected to some degree because I'm in communications. I come out of an arts background, but I'm more in media communications. And there's a lot of people in this area, in this market. It's competitive, but there's a lot of opportunity as well. And there's also, I think we see, I just want to finish this off, we see the need for, we're constantly looking at the news in the context now with COVID, we're constantly looking at news. And so I think there is a need to express and explore the time now and communicate messages now in clear and strong ways. So that's a need that never goes away. Like food, we need to communicate as well as we need to eat.
On that, I'd like to say thank you very much, Ian Hobbs,
Thank
for
you.
coming and being a part of our professional placement.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good luck with your projects. I hope you get a film budget soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.